Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm so honored to be here. I'm so honored that you're giving me the hungriest part of your day in order to allow me to share some insights and my story from some of the work that I do. So, my name is Malaz, and I work with youth here in Houston. I am the eldest of 10 children born to immigrant parents who came here in the 90s. And so, as you can imagine, I got to witness firsthand my parents struggling to make a living for themselves, but also to parent in a culture that felt like it was counter to everything that Islam values. And so, parenting and helping nurture youth that are flourishing became something that was really, really important to me. It sort of became the problem that I saw in the world that I couldn't ignore. Alhamdulillah. So, a little bit of background, I have a degree in psychology from Rice University and then two masters, Islamic studies, and an MBA that I'm almost done with, inshallah. And today, I wanted to come and reiterate something that I think has been said, but maybe hasn't rung true for enough people quite yet. Um, so, young people, the young people that I see, the young people that I work with, are deeply struggling in ways that I think that are not always at the forefront of our community's consciousness. They're deeply struggling, and I genuinely believe we're not doing enough. So my talk today is about youth in community. So that starts with the reality of what's going on. I'm going to kind of share with you some statistics, share with you some things that I know. Some people call it a youth crisis, but I don't like to be that pessimistic. I think it's a challenge and an opportunity for our community to grow. And so, on that note, what I hope to be sharing with you today is the hope, this opportunity that we as a community have, the hopeful opportunity that each one of us can implement so that we can affect some positive change. And so, I'm going to start with a quote from FYI, Family and Youth Institute. They're in Dallas. And what they do is they do sort of the scientific part of this. They do research all over North America on youth, on Muslim youth, what's happening with them, how can we better serve them. And one of the conclusions of a long report that they published is that the perception of American Muslim youth risk behaviors. So our perceptions of how risky the behaviors that Muslim youth are engaging in is, right? That perception is low. And so therefore that results in a lack of awareness among the Muslim community of what's really going on with youth. And this mirrors what I experience and see in my work. So for the most part, the Muslim community is not aware of how much youth are struggling and how many risk factors are really engaged in, and at times how bad the situation truly is or can get or can be. And so what I would like to do very concisely is I want to briefly shed some light on some of the issues that young people face and are going through. And then I want to focus the majority of my talk today on the pragmatic. What can we do? What can I do? What can we do as individuals? What can we do as families? And then collectively, what can we do as a community to begin to make this situation a little bit better? Because it's not enough just to say our youth are struggling, there's a crisis, they're leaving Islam, yada, yada, right? We hear this and it's sensational, but it's not enough. It's not enough to just stop there. It's not enough to wait for communities to start huge initiatives in order to address this. I think each one of us has a role and an opportunity before them, especially with COVID and the quarantine. I'll explain that in a little bit. We have an opportunity to do that one thing, that's one step that will then contribute to a community's healing and a community's reintegration of its youth. So the current situation shows that youth generally are struggling with issues of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and addictive behaviors. And these are the sort of four that I'm going to be focusing on. We don't have direct statistics about the prevalence of these issues in the pre-college cohort. So the students and youth that I work with are typically between the ages of 8 or 9, all the way up to 16, 17, 18. It's pre-college, right? It's whenever they're most immersed in the community, whenever parents sort of have the strongest influence on them. It's whenever they're still in community with us before they transition to college. So we don't have direct statistics about this cohort and what's happening with them. I just have my personal experience and experience through my work. But what we do have is statistics about what happens to them whenever they go to university. And as you can imagine, there's a relationship between those two, right? The stronger our youth can become here, the stronger they'll be there. And so if we look at what happens to Muslim university students, like what sort of behaviors are they engaging in? It's not a pretty picture. And I think that mirrors and reflects what we see in our work, that our youth are genuinely like struggling. They're struggling and they're alone. So Muslim university students, greater than 40% drink alcohol pretty regularly. And about half of both genders engage in premarital sexual activity of some kind. And the statistics about 30% do drugs of some other sort, right? And this is without getting into the deep and kind of the other toxic risk factors or behaviors, right? It was just the overall stat. And so I believe that in many ways, the cohort that I work with, the youth that I see ages 8 to 16, are our greatest potential, right, for change, right? It's where they're still sort of open to us and we have time with them, right? And that cohort is where the onset of these challenges first happen, right? And so I'm hoping that today, the insights that I'm able to share, the recommendations, the challenges that I posit can be a way for our community to help prevent and heal the challenges that youth are going through as they initially begin, right, with this younger crowd, so that we're able to affect real change. So it's not a matter of, oh, my son is in college and he's thinking about leaving Islam. And before even, the initial onset, before something becomes, depression gets so bad that it needs therapeutic intervention. And I want to iterate that I'm not a therapist. And so this early onset, this sort of like pre-therapy, young ages 8 to 16 is what I focus on. And that's where I'll be pulling the insights and recommendations. Now, my main point for today is that these 4 kind of toxic risk factor behaviors that we see, right? Depression, anxiety, self-harm, and self-addictive behaviors are actually symptoms of something deeper that's going on. I believe, and this is kind of corroborated based on my readings, I could share some of those resources later, but depression, anxiety, self-harm, and self-addictive behaviors are actually kind of like flags. They're warning signs. They're symptomatic of deeper issues. And that deeper issue is the issue of youth isolation and disconnection, right? If you look at depression or anxiety, you look at self-harm, you look at self-addictive behaviors, and you begin to unpack what is going on psychologically when someone presents with that kind of thing. We can think about anxiety. That one's easy for people to imagine, right? So anxiety is this feeling of rumination, like you're overwhelmed. You don't have a feeling of ease or peace, right? You're overwhelmed by the possibilities of what could happen. You're not able to capture this like sense of tawakkul or ease, right? And what does that even mean? That means that as a young person, you're feeling so overwhelmed by the challenges that you're facing, that you're faced in your life, that then you become anxious, right? Why are youth feeling so overwhelmed by the challenges that they have in their life? What is going on with them that it is so overwhelming that it then causes depression or anxiety, or it causes someone to cut themselves? And I think that stems back to my main point today, which is that young people are alone. And when you're alone, when you're isolated, you're not connected to people who can soothe you, you're not connected to people who can guide you, then a small challenge can quickly become something very overwhelming. I often see young people that are more committed to maintaining the perfect story of who they are to their parents than they are to getting help. So I will be, we'll be in a halaqah group, and then there'll be time to sort of share challenges and that kind of thing. And we're talking through self-harm behaviors. And the common narrative is, I don't want to tell my parents. Why? Because I want them to continue to believe that I'm this perfect girl that has no challenges. And I don't trust that they will not be overwhelmed by how intense this thing is. I don't trust that they'll be able to handle it. And so I'm more committed to making sure they're okay, to just continuing their delusion about this happy life that I'm living. And so that contributes to this isolation. And now, I don't think the Muslim community, we don't harp on the Muslim community as unique with these challenges. I think these challenges are something that's reflected in larger trends that are happening in our society, with kind of disintegration of family and the rise of individualism, materialism, capitalism. There's a lot going on in the larger American society that the Muslim community is not immune to. There's a really good book if you are interested in learning more about how sort of the larger societal trends then affect our ability to soothe and affect basically our children's mental health. There's a book by Dr. Gaber Mate called Hold On to Your Kids that's really good. And in that book, he highlights how, or he shows how children are now more connected to other children, right, than they ever were before. So now, more than 50 years ago, they're connected to more other children, right? So the people that are closest to them are other children, or YouTube influencers, or personas and stars. They're not as connected to stable adult figures. And so you can ask the question, well, why is that problematic, right? Don't our young ones need friends? Is it okay that my kid is connected to a lot of their friends? They're on the phone all the time. That's fine, right? Why is that problematic? Well, it's problematic because whenever we take apart what the role of connection for humans really is. First of all, we have this sort of understanding and tradition, right? Our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there's numerous hadith, but one in which he highlights that man is really influenced by the faith of his friends. Therefore, be careful of whom you befriend. And in this hadith narrated by At-Tirmidhi, this hadith is talking about, adults. Like, we are very influenced by the people that surround us as adults. So you can imagine this effect is compounded for our young people who are more malleable and still defining their identities. And there's also this common adage: you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if the 5 people that our child is spending the most time with is a YouTube star, another YouTube star, and then 3 other, 9-year-olds, well, then it makes sense that our child really doesn't, is reflecting the sort of values that he or she is reflecting, right? If we unpack this a bit, I think the most important point here is that connection, right? By connection, we mean vulnerable truth and trust, right? The sort of relationship that allows for idea flow, allows you to share who you really are and supports you, right? Connection helps us as human beings soothe our emotions. It helps us deepen our values. It helps us understand the world, right? It helps us figure out who we are in the world. And again, this is multiplied for people that are young, right? Because the people that are young are less likely to be connected to Rabbul Alameen. I think of my work sometimes as connecting to young people until they learn how to connect to Allah, right? So helping them through that connection soothe their emotions, helping them deepen their values, helping them figure out their identities and who they are, until they're able to then connect with Rabbul Alameen, and that being the well, right, of greater mental health and stability and peace and that sakina. So it's not a surprise. It's genuinely not a surprise whenever you think about it that way, that our children are anxious, that they're depressed, that they're cutting themselves, that they feel suicidal. And so the reality is they're not connected to adults. They're not connected to people who help role model deeper values. They're not connected to people who help role model how you soothe your emotions, right? The reality is they're not connected. And so the challenges that they're facing, the why they're struggling so much, we see that as a symptom of this disconnection. And this is also corroborated by the general, it's like a sort of consensus in the scientific community that's coming out, where they look at these psychological issues as symptoms of disconnection and isolation. There's a saying with psychologists that the opposite of addiction, right? Addiction being something that you have to do over and over again to soothe yourself. The opposite of addiction is connection, right? And the scientific community is also standing behind this research that shows that the strength of your social system, the strength of the relationship that you have in your life is actually more important to your long-term health than whether or not you exercise, right? And look at us, like we commit our children to gyms and we commit them to soccer practice and karate and all of this because we know about the importance of exercise. But now we know that connection and them being connected primarily to you, primarily to adults who are well balanced, who are principled and valued. But connection and relationships, real relationships, are actually more important to their well-being than whether or not they run for 30 minutes. So connection heals. And I think in this reality is a huge opportunity for our community, a huge opportunity for us in dealing with this youth disconnection and dealing with the problems that youth have. We can go out and we can connect with them, right? Or because it's COVID, you can stay in and you can connect with them. But you can go, you can connect, and you don't have to be the perfect parent, right? You don't have to be the perfect community member. You don't have to be the perfect role model in order to connect with a young person and have that connection be healing. We don't have to be the perfect community. We just have to commune, as in we have to be connected. And so your biggest effect on the young people around you, right? Your biggest effect on your children, on your siblings, right? The young people that you are worried about, your biggest effect is through your relationship with them, through a loving, caring, authentic relationship with them. Not through your lectures, not through the books that you give them, although those can be helpful, right? It's not through your criticism, right? It's not through your rants. It's not through the things you make them do. It's through the supportive relationship that validates their identity, shows them you care, right? And shows them how to be as someone who is healthy, someone who is connected, someone who is happy, someone who's connected to Rabbil Alameen, someone who prioritizes Islam. Because if you're not connected to them, who is, right? And the person who is connected to them, what are they selling them? What are they teaching them? What are they kind of naturally giving them as culture, right? That's how culture is transmuted, right? That's how culture passes on from one person, from one generation to the next. It's through the connections that we have between us. And somehow like our connections now are really, really fragile. We don't have time for our young people anymore. And so in here, we have a huge, huge opportunity. This is kind of my challenge to myself and my challenge to you, that we can aim first and foremost to connect truly and authentically with the young people in our lives, right? We go out and we connect with them. How are you? Who are you? Let me get to know you as a whole human being that's complex, right? How can I be someone who cares about you? How can I show you that I love you? How can I remain connected with you, right? Because just seeing them, hello, did you do your homework? Hello, are you fasting today? Hi, can you get off your phone for a second and do this thing? That's not true connection, right? You don't know what's happening in their mental, lives. You don't know what's happening emotionally. You don't know them. Then it's no surprise if 5 years from now they do whatever they do, right? There's 3 parts that I want to leave you with, 3 things that I like to emphasize about connection that make it nourishing, right? 3 recommendations, if you may, 3 kind of points of emphasis. So the first point is that for connection to be nourishing, you as the adult in the connection, in the relationship, you have to get good at or be open to learning how to manage yourself, right? I think one of the most frustrating parts of the work that I do is realizing that some of these young people are struggling because the adult in their life doesn't know how to manage their anxiety or expectations, right? So I'll have someone who's struggling with, they're being bullied at school, or they are struggling with thoughts, or struggling with something that could be, made better in a relationship with an adult. You can troubleshoot this together. You can work out this challenge. You can figure it out. But it's made worse. Why? Because this child believes, based on experience, that if they bring something this difficult or this hard and present it to the adult in their life, that adult will freak out, right? That adult will not know how to manage their own anxiety. And so therefore will punish them, will criticize them, will insult them, will blame them for it, right? And so in their mind, they're smart human beings that don't want to feel bad, right? In their mind, what they think is, well, this adult is not safe. They're not going to really help me. They're going to make the situation worse. So therefore, the only thing that I do is I either isolate myself, stay with the situation, or I talk about it with my friends, and it's all young, people that are my age, and we might not have the resources to actually deal with this. So it is so important that you as an adult, or you as a role model, you as a family member, you as a youth leader, you as an older sister, an older brother, you as someone who is in a relationship with a younger person, right? That you get good at managing yourself. You get good at breathing through your anxiety. You get good at realizing that this person is coming to me with a problem. They trust me. My anger, my frustration, my disappointment, my sadness, this is not the place for it, right? Maybe I can lean on other relationships in order to process everything that's coming up for me. But right now I need to be strong here for them. I need to show them that, hey, maybe this freaks me out, but we're going to figure it out, right? The second kind of point of emphasis is a lot of these young people are so starved for affection, right? So while you're attempting to connect, I want you to show that you care. And don't be stingy with this. Be as generous as show them that you love them, show them that you care. And this helps establish that trust, right? I'm here for you. I'm not here so that you become perfect. You don't have to be a perfect human being, right? You and I, we're in this dunya together. We're in this dunya to struggle. Rabb al-Alamin did not promise us perfection. Yeah, the only thing that we know is we will die and we will meet Allah. And between that now and that point, there will be struggle, and we are tested on how we react and act through that struggle. We will get through this together. I don't expect you to be perfect, right? I struggle, you struggle, we have challenges, right? We're going to get through this together because I care about you, because I love you, because I respect you, right? You are a human being that deserves these things. You make mistakes, and I will tell you about your mistakes, and I will help guide you, but I will not do that by violating or disrespecting you. Okay? Show you care. Tell them you love them. Tell them that even though they make bad grades, you're not disappointed in them. That they can get through this too. That these grades do not define their worth and who they are. Okay? And the last point is that this connection, for it to be nourishing, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? You can do this at whatever level you're at whatever you're capable of doing. But for it to be nourishing, you have to sort of be brave and challenge yourself to be honest and authentic, as honest and authentic as you could possibly be, right? You are the role model, maybe you're the adult in the relationship, but you don't have all the answers. You are not perfect, right? And often role modeling the way that you think through a challenge is more powerful than having the answer. They don't come to you in order for you to just give them the correct hadith or to tell them the answer or to problem solve it right. I know that you are anxious and you love them or you want to solve it for them. You want to make it better immediately. But sometimes it's better to kind of hold off on that and allow them to see you or together with them troubleshoot the problem. How can we think through this? Okay, you're being bullied at school. Okay, what are some ideas? How can we figure this out? What is this, right? Allow them that moment to troubleshoot with you so that you don't have to solve it and they don't have to solve it, but you guys can figure it out together. And in that, you're role modeling what they will do whenever they're troubleshooting or solving these problems on their own, right? That requires sort of a level of transparency with your child, right? That requires them knowing, hey, I'm not a perfect human, but I'm a human that loves you and is committed to doing it. And that's the bravest thing, right? Hey, you telling me that your friends are doing drugs behind school makes me a little anxious. So I'm going to kind of breathe here for a little bit. Give me like 5 minutes and let's come back to this. Tell me how you're thinking about this. Are you there with them? Or are you trying to, what are you doing, right? Being a little bit more open. I think sometimes whenever we get overwhelmed by the sort of challenges that young people bring to us, we tend to be a little bit rash and instinctively kind of react, and that can be a little bit detrimental. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to connect. And I think connecting with our young ones is the way forward. And I think because we're all quarantined, a lot of families are quarantined together, you have a beautiful opportunity to get to know them from start, right? They are human beings, they're complex, they have a whole life that you might not know about. So start by asking the simple questions and expect resistance initially. Because, I mean, if you've been disconnected from them for this long, they're going to be a little bit suspicious in the beginning. So, how are you? Who are you? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite card type? Where do you want to live when you grow up? Who's your best friend? What's the most challenging thing that's ever happened to you? What's a problem that your Muslim friends go through that you guys are trying to solve, right? You can amp up the questions and get to know them, and then let them get to know you as well. That kind of connection, that kind of collaboration is the most powerful protective force in a young person's life, right? It helps them become more resilient to peer pressure, right? It helps them become more resilient to all of the range of kind of mental health issues. So, jazakallah khair for listening. I am really honored to have had this platform, and I hope that this something that I said today maybe clicked for someone and will help us all become a community that's more connected, and will help us become the sort of community that I think our youth deserve. So, jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Malaz. We really appreciate your talk, and inshallah, like you said, this will be something that affects, some families, that makes them think, and inshallah improve some relationships that perhaps were broken.
Ameen, Ya Rabbi, Ameen.
And so now we will have Mu'adhin Abdurrahman. Go ahead and perhaps read some Quran a little bit before the adhan comes on.
Inshallah, جزاك خيرا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. طاسيم. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون إن فرعون علا في الأرض وجعل أهلها شيعا يستضعف طائفة منهم يذبح أبناءهم ويستحيي نساءهم إنه كان من المفسدين ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين ونمكن لهم في الأرض ونري فرعون وهامان وجنودهما منهم ما كانوا يحذرون وأوحينا إلى أم موسى أن أرضعيه فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم ولا تخافي ولا تحزني إنا رادوه إليك وجاعلوه من المرسلين الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. إلا الله.